What's up, designers, and welcome back to Rempton Games. I'm very excited to bring you the next installment of our Game Designer Spotlight series. Today's entry is all about legendary game designer Sid Meier, creator of games such as Sid Meier's Pirates, the Railroad Tycoon series, and of course the classic Civilization series. For today's video, we're going to take a look at his life and career before taking a closer look at his game-making philosophy and design process. Without further ado, let's get into it. Sid Meier was born in Canada in 1954, but grew up in Michigan in the United States. As a child, Meier describes that he's always been interested in games. Before there were computers available in the home, I was making games and designing games with toy soldiers and blocks. I was always trying to understand the rules, the dynamics behind things. Trying to watch football and figure out which plays worked, and why did they work, and what was everyone doing. So I've always had a fascination with the rules behind these interesting outcomes. However, even as he studied these games, he had no ambitions of becoming a game designer, saying, "I didn't really expect to be a game designer. That wasn't really a profession or a career when I was young. There was Monopoly and Sorry, but those weren't games that you aspired to design. The whole idea that game design was a career just wasn't around." Meier went on to attend college at the University of Michigan and graduated with a degree in computer science. After college, Meier got a job at General Instruments Corporation working on cash registers for department stores. It was during this time that Meier got his first gaming computer, an Atari 800. He found that the Atari 800 was pretty easy to work with and began using it to make some simple games. Many of Meier's earliest works were based on games that were popular at the time, such as Space Invaders or Pac-Man. During this time, he reportedly made a space game and put it on his office's network, and it hooked so many people in the office that his boss forced him to take it down. However, Meier's career in game design didn't really begin until 1982, when a group of mutual friends introduced him to Bill Steely at a corporate retreat at the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas. At this meeting, Meier and Steely challenged each other to a variety of arcade games, with Meier winning each time. Eventually, Steely challenged Meier to the flight simulator game Red Baron. Steely, a former Air Force pilot, believed that there was no chance that Meier was going to be able to defeat him at this game. However, he was mistaken. After his defeat, he asked Meier how he had done it, to which he replied, "While you were playing the game, I memorized the algorithms." Meier then went on to claim that he could make a better flight simulator game in a week on his home computer. Steely replied, "If you can make it, I can sell it." It actually took 2 months for Meier to complete his game, which went by the name Hellcat Ace. Steely, true to his word, decided to try to sell the game and sold 50 copies on his first sales call. Hellcat Ace went on to become the first product of the new company that Meier and Steely would form together, which went by the name MicroProse. Fun fact, in 1988, MicroProse actually went on to buy the exact Red Baron cabinet that sparked the creation of the company. Many of MicroProse's earliest games were historical simulations, mainly flight simulations with titles like F-15 Strike Eagle, Solo Flight, and Gunship. However, by 1986, Meier was fascinated with a different idea, making a game around living as a pirate in the Caribbean, which would go on to become Sid Meier's Pirates. The game was not only incredibly successful, but also began the long tradition of putting Meier's name in the title of the games. When asked why this was, Meier's replied that it was mostly a marketing decision. Steely was worried about the pirate game, that it wouldn't sell well because it was so different from the other games that MicroProse had made up to that point. So he suggested that Meier put his name in the title, believing that it might draw in fans of his previous work. Steely, however, describes it differently, claiming that the idea to put Meier's name in the title came from none other than legendary actor and gaming enthusiast Robin Williams. "We were at a dinner at a software publishers meeting and Robin Williams was there. And he kept us in stitches for 2 hours. And he turns to me and says, 'Bill, you should put Sid's name on a couple of these boxes and promote him as the star.'" After Pirates was released, Meier continued to work on flight simulators, but gradually shifted his focus more towards strategy games. Inspired by Will Wright's SimCity, which was itself inspired by Sid Meier's Pirates, Sid Meier decided to make his own God game. That desire, mixed with a childhood interest in trains, led to the creation of Sid Meier's Railroad Tycoon in 1990. This became the first entry in the popular Railroad Tycoon series and also inspired many other MicroProse tycoon titles such as Roller Coaster Tycoon. Following the success of Railroad Tycoon, Meier began to wonder how he could take the God game concept even further. His solution? What if, instead of growing a railroad, you instead grew a civilization? Sid Meier's Civilization was released in 1991 and was an incredible success. It remains probably Sid Meier's most recognizable work even to this day, and has spawned a series that has sold over 40 million copies worldwide. However, while the early 90s was an exciting time for Meier creatively, it wasn't the best for MicroProse financially. They made a number of very expensive investments in areas like their arcade division and designing their own engine for adventure games that left them in a lot of debt. Steely, who was good friends with Spectrum Holobyte president Gilman Louie, convinced him to help MicroProse, and in 1993, the two companies merged. This merger resulted in MicroProse having to close many of its satellite offices and having to lay off a large number of its staff. In 1994, Bill Steely also left MicroProse, claiming that it was a great marriage, but the new company only needed one chairman. MicroProse continued as a separate subsidiary company underneath Spectrum Holobyte until 1996, when Spectrum Holobyte decided to consolidate the two companies and laid off a large number of MicroProse employees to save costs. Unhappy with the layoffs and the corporate reshuffling, Meier left the company, along with two former MicroProse employees, Jeff Briggs and Brian Reynolds, and they decided to form a new company, Firaxis Games. The last game that Meier worked on for MicroProse was a licensed game based on Magic the Gathering, which was released in 1997. This would also be the last game that Meier worked on that did not have his name in the title. At Firaxis, Sid Meier has continued to produce strategy games in a wide variety of different areas, including Civil War combat and, more recently, outer space, with the release of Civilization Beyond Earth and Sid Meier's Starships. He has also produced new entries in his Railroad Tycoon and Pirates series of games, and while he hasn't created any new flight simulators, he did create the Ace Patrol series, which is a series of airplane strategy simulators. The one game he hasn't been able to produce, his white whale if you will, is Sid Meier's Dinosaurs. Meier's has tried several times to produce a dinosaur-based game, but has never been able to come up with a concept that was fun enough. In a Kotaku interview, he stated that, "I did 3 different prototypes. One was real-time, the other turn-based, and one was a card game. And they were all kind of fun, but just not fun. When asked how he could tell when the game was fun enough, he said, "I play the game. That's how I develop it, by playing the game, tweaking it and changing it. If other people play it and they're like, oh, that's okay, I ask, but you're not still playing it? If they say, no, I put it away, then I know it's a problem. If they're still not playing it, then it's not as fun as it needs to be. If other people at work were playing it long and often, even when they didn't have to, then he knew he was on the right track." Finding the fun is a big part of Meier's design mentality. He believes in finding the fun in any concept and will iterate and try new things until he does. He refuses to release a new game unless it meets his standards of fun. According to Firaxis developer Jake Solomon, Sid just has a very insightful way of looking at the world. He can find the fun in almost anything. Finding the fun is also the source of another aspect of Meier's design philosophy, a focus on prototypes rather than design documents. Meier believes that the only way you can find the fun in a game is by playing it. You can't tell just by looking at a design. Because of this, according to Solomon, Sid's never had to write a design document, because instead of debating with you about some new feature he wants to implement, he'll just go home and at night he'll implement it. And then tomorrow when he comes in, he'll say, okay, now play this new feature. Part of finding the fun in any design is listening to the players. Solomon continues, he told me a phrase I use all the time. Feedback is fact. That's the way you have to look at feedback, as if it's a fact. You've worked on this massive system or this game, and they come in your office and they go, I played it and I was bored. The worst thing you could do as a designer is start to defend your design or argue with that person. What you do is accept what that person told you as a fact. They said they were bored, so guess what? Your game bored that person. And you need to figure out why that is. When responding to feedback, Meier is not the type to make small changes. Brian Reynolds describes another one of his rules. If you're making a video game and you're having trouble with a number, say the number of damage points a unit can do, either double it or cut it in half. He didn't have the patience for, let's try increasing it by 10%, let's try another 10%. It turns out that's a pretty good rule of thumb to start with for a game designer, because the typical thing is to be really careful and try to inch up a bit, and then you have to change it 7 times to get it right. If you double it, you'll immediately feel whether making it stronger was even a good idea. Finally, one of Sid Meier's most well-known design philosophies is his belief that a great video game is a series of interesting decisions, a set of situations in which the player is constantly confronted with meaningful choices. If you want to learn more on that topic, I've actually made a whole video on it which you can check out as soon as you're done watching this one. In regards to his own games, however, this philosophy lies at the very core of Sid Meier's designs. Meier tends not to design linear, story-driven games. Instead, he likes to present the player with choices that allow them to create their own narrative. I prefer games where the player can lead the game in the direction that they want, and then they kind of end up with that unique story that only they can know. This also partially explains a number of design decisions he has made in games in the past. While he often makes games based on history and tries to be historically accurate in many respects, he often avoids many of the darker parts of history. Combat in his games, for instance, tend to be very tame when it comes to violence. One other major historical omission in regards to the Civilization series is his decision to not include slavery in these games. When asked about this decision, Meier explained that there's a conflict between an emotionally charged topic and kind of giving the player this freedom of choice that really makes the game good. One of the things we really try to avoid in our games is this kind of, this choice would be the right thing to do, but this choice is going to help me win. Put the players in those kinds of moral dilemmas. That's not what our games are about. We want you to feel good about yourself when you finish the game. Basically, he doesn't want players to have to choose between the morally correct choice and the strategically advantageous choice. The Civilization series in particular has a large number of other interesting design choices, which could go a long way in explaining its long-running success as a series. One of the most fundamental design decisions of the Civilization series is to have the design of each game led by a different person. While Sid Meier's name continues to be in the title of the game, he actually only led the design of the first entry. However, even though different people have led the designs of different entries in the Civilization series, the core design philosophy still remains the same. When asked what makes a good Civ game, Meier responded, "What happens in the player's imagination, what fueled this one more turn phenomena, was that you were always projecting what was going to happen next, and what was going to happen 8 turns from now. You had multiple irons in the fire." He also described how he designed the rule set of Civilization, saying that the basic rule set is pretty clear. You're dealing with clear, intuitive rules and basing your strategy on them interacting. Even though the systems are pretty straightforward, how they interact with each other, how you make the trade-offs is where the interest lies, where the interesting decisions show up. In regards to whether newer entries in the series should still be considered Sid Meier games, he explained that, "I think they are all true to the core precepts of Civilization. We call it the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 rule. When we do a new Civ game, 1/3 of it is the stuff we know has to be there. 1/3 of it is things that we've tried, a religion system or an espionage system, but have now figured out how to do it better. And 1/3 is brand new ideas." I guess I feel ownership of those fundamental rules, the basic concepts that we talked about a minute ago, the one more turn, the anticipation. But the new ideas from other people are also very significant. I'm not uncomfortable that my name is on there as a brand, because I think these games are true to the ideas that made Civ work in the first place. But it's not that I'm claiming that every good idea in there is mine. Finally, in regards to where he gets the ideas for his games, Sid Meier says that he likes to make games based on things that he is personally fascinated about. Things like history, pirates, railroads, dinosaurs, and airplanes. He likes to take things that he was interested in as a child and revisit them, remember what was cool and fun about them, and try to bring that to life. The games that I make are the ones that I wanted to play, but nobody had made them yet. I had to make them before I could play them. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos like this in the future. If you want to see more, check out my other videos, like the one where I dig further into the design philosophy that games are a series of interesting decisions. I also have over 100 articles on the Rempton Games blog, which you can check out in the description down below. If you want to see more videos in this series, please let me know, and leave suggestions in the comments for designers that you would like to see spotlighted in future videos. And join me next week for a video on designing characters in the Super Smash Bros. Series. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.